Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Ross Bagnall. This evening's Last Post ceremony is a poignant one. It gives us the opportunity to say farewell to Dr. Brendan Nelson, the Director of the Australian War Memorial. Dr. Nelson's influence at the Australian War Memorial will be long-lasting, and the Last Post ceremony is just one among many achievements that will remind us of his tenure. The Last Post ceremony, in its current form, was introduced soon after Dr. Nelson came to the memorial. The idea was that each day, just one individual whose name is listed on the Roll of Honour would have their story told and remembered. The ceremony has now delivered close to 3,000 individual stories, and it has offered families and friends the opportunity to attend and to pay tribute. It has also enabled us to share Australia's military history to a wider audience. Brendan, we thank you for your service to the memorial, to the veteran community, and to the nation. And we wish you and your family the best in the future. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest, Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Vivian Robert Bailey. Vivian Robert Bailey was born to Robert and Emily Bailey in 1893 in Tamworth, New South Wales. After finishing school, he became a farm labourer in the Tamworth district. In July 1915, Bailey enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in Newcastle and then trained in Australia for several months. In early November, he embarked from Sydney on board the transport ship Beltana, arriving in Egypt in December. For the next 6 months, he trained at Tel El Kabir with the 30th Battalion as a driver. In this role, he worked with the horses of the small transport section that was part of battalion headquarters. In June 1916, Bailey and his battalion sailed to France to join the British forces fighting on the Western Front. The 30th Battalion had its first experience of warfare in July at the disastrous Battle of Fromelles in northern France. Within 24 hours, more than a third of its men were killed, wounded or missing. The 5th Division, of which the 30th Battalion was a member, was taken out of the front line and spent the rest of the year regrouping and training to return to its former strength. During 1917, the battalion occupied the French town of Bapaume, when the Germans retreated to a stronger defensive position along the Hindenburg Line. It also saw action at the Second Battle of Bullecourt and at Polygon Wood later in the year. At these battles, the battalion was in reserve, and Bailey's role included moving material to the troops in the front line. Bailey showed leadership skills in his section and was appointed Lance Corporal in early 1917, and in the middle of the year was promoted to Corporal. His unit spent the winter of 1917 and 1918 in Flanders near the French village of Messines. In spring 1918, the Germans launched what would be their final offensive of the war. known as the German Spring Offensive. The 30th Battalion was stationed behind the front line at Noyers-Église in northern France, close to the Belgian border. Although the men of the 30th were not in the front line, they were still subjected to German artillery shelling. On the 23rd of March 1918, Bailey and another member of his unit, driver Leslie Day, were in a transport wagon that was hit by a German high-velocity shell. Both men were killed. Bailey was 25 years old. By a strange coincidence, his brother, Private Wilfred Campbell Bailey, had been killed in action in France on the same day the year before. Vivian Bailey was buried in Westhoff Farm Cemetery near Ypres in Belgium, alongside Driver Day and 129 other Commonwealth soldiers of the First World War. His mother chose the epitaph to be inscribed on his headstone: "To be fondly loved in life, never to be forgotten in death." As overseas travel was not an option for most Australians in the early 20th century, soldiers' parents had to be content with photographs of their sons' graves and the small personal items that were returned to Australia. In Australia, Bailey was survived by his mother, Emily. She suffered further pain when the package containing his personal effects was lost. He was bound for Australia on the steamship Barunga when that ship was torpedoed by a German submarine off the coast of Cornwall in July 1918. British destroyers were soon on the scene and managed to rescue all aboard, but the personal effects of Bailey and about 5,000 other Australian soldiers who had died at the Western Front were lost. Corporal Vivian Robert Bailey is listed on the Roll of Honour on the right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. But this is one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Vivian Robert Bailey, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as those that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.